Welcome to ServiceNow Tech Bytes, bringing you an inside look at our products. I'm your host, Steve Miller. Today we're going to talk with Product Manager Sibo Ding about natural language understanding. It's a ServiceNow capability that lets users interact with several ServiceNow products through natural speech or text. Stay tuned. Today I'm happy to welcome Sibo Ding to our virtual studio. Welcome, Sibo.
Thanks for having me.
Before we start talking about NLU, maybe you could tell our listeners a little bit about what you do here at ServiceNow.
Yeah, so I've been at ServiceNow for almost 2 years now. I'm an inbound product manager on the NLU team. So I basically help drive the NLU Workbench product, which is an admin tool that lets users deploy and tune their NLU models. And I also work with our NLU backend team. So making sure that the technology is evolving and improving it for our customers.
Okay, you say you joined about 2 years ago. That would have been during COVID then.
Yeah, I've been remote almost the entire time until recently when we're going back to office.
Yeah, we're starting to head that way ourselves. So I'm down here in San Diego. Where are you located?
I'm based out of Santa Clara, but I'm actually from San Diego. So I go back and forth between the two.
Oh, okay, so you know my hometown then. Great. And how about when you're not at work? What do you like to do?
I've been playing a lot of volleyball recently, so you can find me in a lot of grass courts or indoor courts. I also like to take my dog around hiking and swimming, so we like to check out a lot of new places around the bay. And then lastly, just eating a lot of food. There's a lot of good food in the bay.
Sounds good. So volleyball, do you ever play beach volleyball?
I haven't played it as much, but I want to get into it more.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds fun. I've enjoyed that myself. All right, let's talk a little bit about NLU. So, for folks who may not be familiar with it, can you tell us in general what is NLU and what is it used for?
Yeah, so NLU stands for Natural Language Understanding. And it's basically a type of AI that allows machines to understand human language. So most commonly, NLU is used to power chatbots, and it enables the chatbot to understand what the end users are typing so that the chatbot can drive the next actions to serve the user's requests. So a little bit of basics. So within NLU, there's intents, utterances, and entities. Those are the kind of the foundational building blocks of an NLU model. Think of an intent as something that the end user wants to do. So it could be anything from resetting their password to ordering a new device. The intent just captures what the user wants. And an utterance is like an expression of that intent. So it's any of the various ways that the user may express that intent. Maybe they'll say, I need to reset my password. I forgot my password. All of these count as utterances that make up that intent. And lastly, we have entities, which help extract the important information from the user's utterance. So the user may say, I want to order a MacBook, and MacBook is an important detail there about the type of laptop that they want. So anything could be an entity such as date, time, location, these kind of important details in the utterance.
Okay, so NLU basically that's taking the user's utterances in their natural language and mapping those to intents in terms of actions and objects that the computer understands, that the system understands. Do I have that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right. What do we use NLU for here at ServiceNow?
At ServiceNow, we primarily use NLU for Virtual Agent, which is our chatbot product. So NLU helps VA to understand what the end users are saying and extract those entities so that VA can continue with the topic flow and lead a user down the right path. So before we had NLU at ServiceNow, people used to use keywords to power their virtual agent. What this means is that you can configure a set of words that you want when users say that keyword in the chat, then it would trigger that corresponding topic. Now, this is obviously like a very simplistic approach, which makes it easy to deploy, but it's very limiting and it's not as good as NLU because it's keyword based. It doesn't understand typos, spelling mistakes, a lot of the natural language elements, like it's not supported, which is why we wanted to have a real NLU product. NLU, on the other hand, can understand a much larger variety of user phrases because it's trained on the user data itself. So it actually helps provide a much better end user experience. The chat experience is more natural and it has a better accuracy. So it enables VA to surface those correct topics to the user. So that covers how we use NLU for VA, which is most of our use cases at ServiceNow. But in addition, we also use NLU for other applications such as AI search. So for AI search, we use NLU to understand user search queries and trigger the right relevant genius results to the end user. And on our roadmap, we have plans to expand the usage of NLU to another application called Issue Auto Resolution, or IAR, where you can use VA topics to address incidents that are created by users, both IT and HR incidents.
Well, one fun thing about being the host of this podcast is that I get a glimpse into the history of our different products. It's interesting to hear how they came to be. So could you tell us a little bit more about the history of NLU here?
We got NLU through an acquisition. It was back in the day with the Parlo acquisition. And then we since have replatformed it and we released NLU at ServiceNow for the very first time in the New York release. And back then it wasn't called NLU Workbench. It was the NLU Model Builder. And we had released it with a primary goal of using it for virtual agent. And then since then it's evolved into a much better admin tool, and we call it NLU Workbench now, with a lot of guidance for NLU admins to go there to maintain their models. And then we've also, like I mentioned previously, expanded the use beyond virtual agent to other applications.
Okay. I'm guessing that during that evolution, you've been in pretty close contact with customers during that process. Have they been good help in directing the evolution?
Yeah, we love to involve our customers every single release to get a lot of product feedback. So we work really closely with them as we're developing new features too, to incorporate their feedback. And we also hear a lot from our customer facing teams, our solution consultants, and other folks on the field who work every day with customers to deploy the NLU and just incorporate that feedback.
All right. So for a company that's using ServiceNow products, what's the general process for implementing NLU in those products?
Yeah, so the high level process is to identify what intents and topics you want to build, and then go ahead and build that, test that iteratively, and then deploy it once the quality is good enough. So I'll go over each of those in a little more detail. So first, you want to identify which NLU intents are most important for your organization. To do that, typically customers will look at their end user chat data or incident data to see what end users have been saying. For identifying new intents to build, we have this tool called Intent Discovery, which does just that, which is you just input your end user data and then it tells you what are the top groups of similar utterances, which can drive your intent creation. So once you have the intents that you want to build, you want to fill those intents out with utterances like I described. So every intent should have a variety of utterances, at least 15, to capture all the different ways that your end users may express that intent. You also want to identify and annotate the entities in your utterances so that the system can help learn those entities and extract them. So once your model has intents, utterances, it's in a good state, you can train the model, and then you want to build a test set to help you assess how that model is performing. So typically, your test set should be very comprehensive. It should have all of the intents that you have in your model. And based on the test results, that'll tell you where you need to go back and improve and tune your model a little bit more. So typically at ServiceNow, our guidance is that you can deploy when your model is performing at about 80% correct, 10% incorrect, and 10% missed. So at that point, you can consider deploying your model. So after you publish your model, then you can go to VA Designer, assuming that you want to use NLU for VA. And that's where you would want to map your intents to those corresponding VA topics. That way, that intent will trigger the correct topic. And at that point, you're ready to publish your topics in production, and end user can start engaging with that. And then post deployment, there's a series of things that you want to do to continuously monitor the health of your NLU and improve it, because over time, end users may say different things, and you may notice that different intents are becoming more important. So you want to continuously to tune your model. To do that, you can review end user utterances in NLU Workbench and give feedback on whether the predictions were correct or not. And this feedback gets directly incorporated back into your model, and you can see the improvement in your model and redeploy it to VA.
Okay, that's a great overview. Thank you. How would a company get started in that whole process?
Yeah, I would say that a key thing to getting started is to make use of all of the out of the box pre-built NLU content that we ship. So that way you don't have to build NLU models completely from scratch, which can be very intimidating and take a long time. We offer a bunch of pre-built models that cross a span of many domains from ITSM to HR, CSM, etc. So based on the domain that you want to service, you can make use of that content. I would also recommend that you involve domain experts to source the model content for your NLU. So for example, you may get the IT service desk folks to help create your IT intents and utterances since they know that domain very well. You may also want to get an HR specialist to help provide utterances for your HR model. So it's really important for you to delegate that work to people with the domain specific or language specific expertise to expedite the model building process. And lastly, I would say you don't need to create an NLU intent for everything because within virtual agent, there's also a fallback topic, which is triggered when no intent has been found for those utterances. So when you run AI search, it queries your knowledge base, it pulls the articles, which can be easily surfaced to the user. So if there are things that are already covered by your knowledge base articles, you don't have to create an NLU intent for that. And that can just be handled by AI search in the fallback topic.
So basically, that limits your task to creating NLU intents for specific topics that you want to take on.
Yeah, exactly. Because if it's already in the knowledge base, then you can just have AI search handle that. And it can be redundant and extra work to build a topic for that.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're planning for NLU down the road?
Yeah, we have a lot of exciting things coming up. One of the things that we're working on is using NLU for more natural mid conversation scenarios. We call that dialogue acts. I can explain a little bit more. So the goal of dialogue acts is to enable more flexible and natural conversation throughout the entire conversation experience. Because up till now, we've been mostly using NLU to detect the right topics and send users to the right topics for their requests. But once a user is in an actual topic and going through that conversation, we also want to make sure that they have a natural experience throughout the conversation. If they want to do something in the middle of a conversation, that we are able to understand that. So for example, dialogue acts will allow the users to change their mind and modify their selection. So maybe they'll say something like, I want a PC instead of a MacBook. So through dialogue acts, that actually enables VA to understand and take the user back to where they want to make a change in the conversation. We can also understand things like variations of them saying yes or no. So maybe if the VA asks, do you want a MacBook? And the user says, yeah, that'd be great. That's something that we can understand through NLU. So yeah, we're really hopeful about how dialogue acts can give a much better end user conversational experience. And as a part of that, it's also using the user conversation context to make those predictions. And that really drives better prediction quality. Another key thing coming on our roadmap is definitely generative AI and the use of large language models, as I'm sure everyone has been learning a lot and really interested in this space recently. But we're really hopeful about how we can use large language models to significantly reduce the amount of work that NLU admins currently have to do to create their model, build, maintain it, and deploy it. So we're definitely investing a lot of time and working that into this area.
All right, thank you. I've been curious about that myself. It seems like generative AI is just affecting every aspect of what ServiceNow does, and I figured it would be something useful for NLU.
Yeah, it definitely will change the NLU workbench experience a lot.
All right, thank you very much for the information you've given us so far. Is there anything else you want to mention before we wrap up?
Yeah, the last thing I would say is to just explore product documentation on the Virtual Agent NLU forum on ServiceNow community. It's a very active forum with a lot of experts who post about best practices and troubleshooting guides. So that can help you a lot if you're looking to start out on NLU or if you just have any questions about your deployment. We also have an active YouTube channel with weekly videos from conversational interfaces where you can see demos and newer features that are up and coming.
Okay, thank you. I'm not surprised to hear there's a lively community out there. It seems like that's something that's common for a lot of products. We have both ServiceNow folks and customers swapping information and helping each other out there.
Yeah, we have a really active customer base.
All right. I just want to thank you very much, Sibo, for joining us today and for explaining LU. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Please tell us what you think of this podcast. You can leave feedback or ask questions in the ServiceNow community. For more information on any ServiceNow topic, take a look at our product documentation or knowledge base or our ServiceNow support YouTube channel. Thanks for listening.